What if I told you that the most powerful man in the city, a billionaire who could have anyone he wanted, would one day find himself completely captivated by the woman who delivered his lunch? Not by the supermodels who filled his inbox with messages. Not by the socialites who appeared at every charity gala hoping for his attention, but by a single mother working 3 jobs just to make ends meet. This isn't just another rags-to-riches fairy tale. This is a story about seeing beyond appearances, about finding authentic connection in a world obsessed with status, and about how true love often finds us in the most unexpected places. I'm about to take you on a journey that will make you question what really matters in life. And trust me, by the end, you'll never look at a delivery person the same way again. Alexander Pierce had everything a man could want, or at least everything society told him he should want. At 38, he was the founder and CEO of Pierce Innovations, a tech company valued at over $4 billion. His face had graced the cover of Forbes twice. His wardrobe consisted entirely of bespoke suits that each cost more than what most people made in a month. He lived in a penthouse apartment that occupied the entire top floor of the most exclusive building in the city. But despite all this, Alexander was profoundly alone. "Mr. Pierce, the board meeting starts in 10 minutes. His assistant Rebecca reminded him through the intercom. "Thank you, Rebecca," he replied, not taking his eyes off the city below. There was a time when Alexander had been excited by board meetings, by the challenge of convincing smart, skeptical people that his vision was worth investing in. Now, they were just another obligation in a calendar full of obligations. As he turned from the window, his phone buzzed with a notification. It was from Elite Match, the exclusive dating app that catered to the ultra-wealthy. The woman in the profile picture was objectively stunning. A model from Sweden with cheekbones that could cut glass and a portfolio that included campaigns for Gucci and Prada. Alexander swiped left, just as he had for the last 8 models the app had suggested for him this week. Rebecca appeared at his office door. "Mr. Pierce? They're ready for you in the boardroom." "I'm coming," he said, pocketing his phone. As he followed his assistant down the hallway, he couldn't help but wonder if this was all there was to life. An endless parade of meetings, obligations, and shallow connections. The board meeting dragged on for 3 hours. By the time it was over, Alexander was starving. He'd skipped breakfast that morning, too focused on preparing for the meeting to eat. "Rebecca, can you order lunch for me?" he asked as they walked back to his office. "Of course." The usual. Alexander hesitated. He'd had the same lunch, a kale Caesar salad with grilled chicken from Greenleaf, every workday for the past 2 years. "Actually, no," he said, surprising himself. "Let's try something different today. There's that new place, Homemade, that just opened up a few blocks away. I heard their comfort food is exceptional." Rebecca raised an eyebrow but nodded. "I'll place the order right away." As Alexander settled back into his office, he wondered why he'd changed his routine. Maybe it was the lingering dissatisfaction from the board meeting, or maybe it was something deeper, a growing realization that his carefully constructed life had become as bland and predictable as his lunch order. Olivia Martinez rushed around her small apartment, trying to get everything ready before she had to leave for her shift. "Jamie, have you finished your homework?" she called to her 9-year-old son, who was sitting at their small kitchen table, pencil in hand. "Almost, Mom," he replied, not looking up from his math problems. Olivia glanced at the clock. 9:45 a.m. She had to be at Homemade by 10 o'clock for her shift, and then she had deliveries starting at noon. After that, she'd pick up Jamie from after-school care and take him to her mother's before heading to her evening job as a receptionist at a local gym. 3 jobs, and she was still barely making ends meet. But she was determined to give Jamie the life he deserved, even if it meant working herself to exhaustion. "Okay, I've got to go. Grandma will pick you up from school today, and I'll see you tonight for dinner. Okay?" Jamie looked up, his expression serious beyond his years. "Are you going to eat dinner with us tonight? Or do you have to go to your other job?" The question pierced Olivia's heart. "I'll be there for dinner, I promise. And this weekend, it's just you and me. We can do whatever you want." Jamie's face brightened. "Can we go to the Science Museum? They have a new space exhibit." "Absolutely," Olivia said, leaning down to kiss the top of his head. Now finish your homework, and I'll see you tonight." As Olivia rushed out the door, she sent a silent prayer of thanks for her son. Despite the challenges of raising him alone after his father walked out, Jamie was the light of her life, bright, kind, and understanding beyond his years. The morning shift at Homemade was busy, as usual. The small restaurant specialized in elevated comfort food, and it had quickly become popular since opening 3 months ago. Olivia worked primarily in the kitchen, helping with food prep, but she also took delivery orders when needed. At 12:30, the owner, Sophia, approached her. "Olivia, I need you to take a delivery to Pierce Innovations. It's a big order for their CEO, and I want to make sure it gets there perfectly." Olivia nodded, though her stomach tightened with anxiety. Pierce Innovations was housed in one of the most intimidating buildings in the city, all glass and steel, filled with people who earned in a day what took her a week to make. "No problem," she said, forcing a smile. "I'll take care of it." Sophia handed her the order details. "This could be a big account for us if he likes the food. And there's a generous tip included already." The tip would help with the electric bill that had been. Alexander was on a conference call when Rebecca brought in his lunch. He was about to wave her in to just leave it on his desk when he noticed she wasn't alone. Standing in his doorway was a woman he'd never seen before. She wasn't particularly tall, nor was she dressed in anything remarkable. Just a simple black t-shirt with a restaurant logo and jeans. Her dark hair was pulled back in a practical ponytail, and there wasn't a trace of makeup on her face. But something about her stopped Alexander mid-sentence. Perhaps it was the quiet dignity with which she carried herself, or the intelligence in her warm brown eyes. Whatever it was, for the first time in years, Alexander Pierce found himself genuinely curious about another person. "I'll have to call you back," he said abruptly into the phone before hanging up. The woman looked startled, as if she'd done something wrong. "I'm so sorry to interrupt," she said quickly. "I can leave this with your assistant." "No," Alexander said, perhaps too forcefully. He softened his tone. "No, that's all right. You can bring it in." Rebecca gave him a curious look but said nothing as she stepped back to let the delivery woman enter. "Where would you like me to set this up?" the woman asked, her voice melodic despite the nervousness Alexander could detect in it. "The coffee table is fine," he said, gesturing to the seating area near the window where he sometimes held informal meetings. The woman, Olivia, according to her name tag, moved to the coffee table and began unpacking the delivery with careful, efficient movements. Alexander found himself watching her hands, slightly rough, with short, clean nails, the hands of someone who worked hard for a living. "This is our signature pot roast," she explained as she set out the containers. "It's slow-cooked for 8 hours with red wine and herbs. The vegetables are locally sourced, and the bread was baked fresh this morning." She hesitated before adding, "And the chef included a slice of apple pie. It's on the house since this is your first order from us." Alexander realized he was staring and quickly composed himself. "Thank you," he said. "It smells incredible." A genuine smile transformed Olivia's face, and Alexander felt an unexpected warmth in his chest. "It's our most popular dish," she said. "I hope you enjoy it." As she finished setting up his meal, Alexander found himself reluctant to see her go. On impulse, he asked, "Did you make this?" Olivia looked surprised by the question. "I helped," she said. "I work in the kitchen part-time, but I didn't prepare your order specifically. Chef Sophia did. She wanted it to be perfect since you're, well, you." There was no false flattery in her words, just a simple acknowledgement of his status. It was refreshing. "And you also make deliveries?" Alexander asked, aware that he was keeping her but unable to help himself. "I do a bit of everything," Olivia replied. "Kitchen work, deliveries, whatever's needed." She glanced at her watch. "I should probably get going. I have more deliveries to make." "Of course," Alexander said. "Thank you for bringing this." As Olivia turned to leave, Alexander found himself calling after her. "If I order from Homemade again, will you be the one to deliver it?" Olivia paused at the door, looking back at him with a mixture of confusion and something else. Wariness. perhaps. I can't promise that, she said honestly. It depends on the scheduling, but I'm there most days. Alexander nodded, aware that he was behaving strangely but unable to explain why even to himself. Well, thank you again. After she left, Alexander sat down to his meal. The food was indeed exceptional, rich, flavorful, and comforting in a way his usual salad never was. But it wasn't the food that occupied his thoughts as he ate. It was the woman with the warm brown eyes and the honest smile who had delivered it. Over the next 2 weeks, Alexander ordered from Homemade every day, sometimes for lunch, sometimes for dinner when he was working late. He told himself it was because the food was excellent, but deep down, he knew it was more than that. He was hoping to see Olivia again, but fate seemed determined to thwart him. Each delivery came with a different person, a young man with tattoos, an older woman with a friendly smile, a college student who was clearly nervous to be delivering to the CEO of Pierce Innovations. Never Olivia. Rebecca, ever observant, noticed the pattern. "You've developed quite an attachment to this restaurant," she commented one afternoon as she cleared away the remains of his lunch, beef stew with crusty bread. Alexander shrugged, trying to appear casual. "The food is good." "It is," Rebecca agreed. "But there are a lot of good restaurants in this city. Is there perhaps another reason you keep ordering from this particular one?" Alexander gave his assistant a sharp look. After 10 years together, Rebecca knew him better than almost anyone, but he wasn't ready to admit, even to her, that he couldn't stop thinking about a woman he'd met once for less than 5 minutes. "I don't know what you're talking about," he said firmly. Rebecca raised an eyebrow but didn't press the issue. "Of course, sir. Will you be ordering from Homemade again tomorrow?" "Yes," Alexander said, returning his attention to his computer screen. "For lunch." The next day, Alexander was in the middle of reviewing quarterly projections when Rebecca's voice came through the intercom. "Your lunch from Homemade has arrived, Mr. Pierce." Alexander looked up, his heart quickening despite his best efforts to remain composed. "Send them in," he said, straightening his tie, a gesture he immediately felt foolish for making. The door opened, and there she was, Olivia, with her simple black t-shirt and practical ponytail. She looked tired today, with faint shadows under her eyes, but she still had that quiet dignity that had struck him during their first meeting. "Mr. Pierce," she said with a polite nod, "where would you like your lunch today?" Alexander stood, perhaps too quickly. "The coffee table again, please." As Olivia set up his meal, a chicken pot pie this time, with a side salad, Alexander searched for something to say, something that wouldn't reveal how much he'd been hoping to see her again. "How are you?" he asked finally, the question sounding stiff even to his own ears. Olivia glanced up, a flicker of surprise crossing her face. "I'm well, thank you," she said. "And you?" "Good," Alexander replied. "Busy but good." An awkward silence fell between them as Olivia finished arranging his lunch. Alexander knew he should say something else, ask her something about herself, but the words wouldn't come. He was a man who could command a boardroom, who could negotiate multi-million-dollar deals without breaking a sweat, but making small talk with this woman somehow left him tongue-tied. "You've been ordering from us a lot," Olivia observed as she straightened up. "You must really like the food." "I do," Alexander said, seizing the opening. "It's a nice change from my usual lunch. Actually, I was wondering." He hesitated, then plunged ahead. "Would you like to join me? For lunch, I mean, there's plenty here." Olivia's expression shifted from surprise to wariness. "That's very kind of you, Mr. Pierce, but I can't. I have more deliveries to make, and I'm already running behind today." "Of course," Alexander said quickly, embarrassed by his presumption. "I understand." Olivia moved toward the door, then paused. "Thank you for the invitation, though," she added, her tone softening slightly. "It was unexpected." After she left, Alexander sat down to his lunch, the food no longer as appealing as it had been moments before. He'd handled that poorly, coming on too strong too quickly. No wonder she'd been wary. A wealthy man inviting a service worker to an impromptu lunch? He could only imagine what she must have thought of him. but he couldn't shake the feeling that there was something special about Olivia Martinez. And Alexander Pierce wasn't a man who gave up easily on something he wanted. For 3 days, Alexander didn't order from Homemade. He told himself it was because he needed to respect Olivia's boundaries to give her space. In reality, he was nursing his wounded pride and trying to figure out his next move. On the 4th day, as he was leaving the office late in the evening, he spotted a familiar figure across the street. Olivia was exiting a building, dressed differently than he'd seen her before, in a simple blouse and black pants, her hair loose around her shoulders. Before he could think better of it, Alexander crossed the street toward her. "Olivia?" he called when he was close enough to be heard without shouting. She turned, her expression changing from confusion to recognition. "Mr. Pierce," she said, clearly surprised to see him. "What are you doing here?" "I work just across the street," he said, gesturing toward the Pierce Innovations building. "I was heading home. What about you?" "I just finished my shift," she replied, and Alexander noticed the logo on the building behind her. It was a 24-hour fitness center. "You work here too?" he asked. Olivia nodded. "I'm the evening receptionist. 3 nights a week." Alexander processed this information. "So you work at Homemade and here?" "And I drive for a rideshare company on weekends," Olivia added, a defensive edge creeping into her voice. "Is that a problem?" "No, not at all," Alexander said quickly. "I'm just impressed. That's a lot of work." Olivia's posture relaxed slightly. "It is what it is," she said with a small shrug. "I do what I have to do." They stood in awkward silence for a moment before Alexander spoke again. "Can I give you a ride home? My driver is waiting just around the corner." Olivia hesitated. "That's very kind, but I was going to take the bus. It's not far." "Please," Alexander said. "It's late. And it's the least I can do after you've delivered my lunch so many times." Olivia seemed to consider for a moment before nodding. "All right, thank you." As they walked to his waiting car, Alexander felt an unfamiliar nervousness. This wasn't a business meeting or a charity gala. This was simply walking down a street with a woman he found intriguing, and he had no idea what to say next. His driver, James, was standing beside the black Tesla, and he opened the door as they approached. "Good evening, Mr. Pierce," he said, his professional demeanor not changing as he nodded politely to Olivia. "James, this is Olivia," Alexander said as they settled into the back seat. "We'll be dropping her off first tonight." "Of course, sir," James replied. "What's the address?" Olivia gave her address, in a neighborhood that Alexander knew was modest at best, struggling at worst. If James had any reaction to the destination, he didn't show it. As the car pulled away from the curb, Alexander turned to Olivia. "I hope I didn't make you uncomfortable the other day," he said, "when I invited you to lunch. It wasn't my intention." Olivia looked at him, her expression thoughtful. "It wasn't that I was uncomfortable," she said after a moment. "I was just confused. Men like you don't usually invite women like me to lunch without an agenda." "Men like me," Alexander echoed. "Wealthy, powerful men," Olivia clarified. "In my experience, they usually want something." The directness of her response caught Alexander off guard, but he appreciated her honesty. "I don't have an agenda," he said. "I just enjoyed talking to you." As strange as that might sound, a small smile played at the corners of Olivia's mouth. "It does sound strange," she admitted, "but I believe you." The rest of the ride passed in conversation that gradually became more comfortable. Alexander learned that Olivia had moved to the city 5 years ago, that she had a degree in culinary arts that she'd never been able to fully use, and that she hoped to open her own small cafe someday. He found himself telling her things too, about the pressure of running a company he'd built from nothing, about the loneliness of success, about how most people saw his wealth and power but not the person behind it. When they arrived at Olivia's apartment building, a worn but clean complex with security bars on the lower windows, Alexander felt a reluctance to end their conversation. "Thank you for the ride," Olivia said as James opened the door for her. "It was nice talking to you, Mr. Pierce." "Alexander," he corrected her. Please call me Alexander. Olivia smiled, a genuine smile that reached her eyes. Alexander, she repeated. Thank you again. As she turned to go, Alexander called after her. Olivia. She looked back at him. Would you have dinner with me sometime? Not at my office. At a restaurant. A proper dinner. Olivia's expression turned serious. Why? She asked simply. It was a fair question, and Alexander decided to answer it with complete honesty. Because in the 15 minutes we've just spent in this car, I've had a more meaningful conversation than I've had in the past year with anyone else. And I'd like to continue it. Olivia studied him for a long moment, as if trying to determine his sincerity. Finally, she nodded. Okay, she said. Dinner. But nothing too fancy, and I'll need to arrange childcare. Childcare? Alexander repeated, caught off guard. Yes, Olivia said, a challenge in her voice. I have a 9-year-old son, Jamie. He's the reason I work 3 jobs. Alexander absorbed this new information. I see, he said. Well, you pick the place and the time and I'll be there. And please don't worry about childcare. Bring Jamie if you'd like. Surprise flickered across Olivia's face, followed by a warmth that made Alexander's heart beat faster. That's very kind of you, she said. But maybe just adults for the first dinner. I'll let you know when I'm free. As Alexander watched her walk to her building, he realized that for the first time in a very long time, he was genuinely looking forward to something that had nothing to do with business. The restaurant Olivia chose was nothing like the places Alexander usually frequented. There were no Michelin stars, no sommeliers, no valet parking. Just a small, family-owned Italian place with checkered tablecloths and candles stuck in old Chianti bottles. Alexander arrived early, having given James the night off and driven himself in one of his less ostentatious cars, a Volvo sedan rather than his usual Ferrari or Bentley. He'd also dressed down in jeans and a simple button-down shirt, leaving behind his usual designer suits. He was nervous, he realized as he waited for Olivia to arrive. Genuinely nervous, like a teenager on his first date, not like the CEO of a multi-billion-dollar company who regularly made decisions that affected thousands of lives. When Olivia walked in, Alexander forgot how to breathe for a moment. She was wearing a simple blue dress that hugged her curves, her dark hair falling in soft waves around her shoulders. She'd applied a touch of makeup, nothing dramatic, just enough to highlight her natural beauty. Alexander stood as she approached the table, a gesture that seemed to surprise and please her. You look beautiful, he said as she sat down. A faint blush colored Olivia's cheeks. Thank you, she replied. You look different too. More relaxed. I am, Alexander admitted. It's nice to have a night away from being Alexander Pierce, CEO, and just be Alexander. The waiter came to take their drink orders, a glass of house red for Olivia, the same for Alexander though he usually drank much more expensive wines. So, Olivia said after the waiter left, you've heard a lot about me. 3 jobs, a son, a dream of opening a cafe someday. But I don't know much about you. Not the real you anyway. Alexander leaned back in his chair. What would you like to know? Where did you come from? Olivia asked. Before you were Alexander Pierce, CEO? It was a good question and one that few people bothered to ask anymore. I grew up in a small town in Ohio, Alexander said. My father was a high school math teacher, my mother a nurse. We weren't poor, but we weren't wealthy either. Just average, middle-class Americans. And how did you get from there to here? Olivia asked, genuinely curious. Alexander told her about his scholarship to MIT, about the algorithm he'd developed in his dorm room that became the foundation for Pierce Innovations, about the early days of the company when he'd worked 20-hour days and slept on a couch in his tiny office. It wasn't all skill, he admitted. There was a lot of luck involved too. Being in the right place at the right time, meeting the right people. Olivia listened intently, asking thoughtful questions. As they moved on to their main courses, spaghetti carbonara for her, lasagna for him, Alexander found himself talking about things he rarely discussed with anyone. His estrangement from his parents who couldn't understand his drive for success. His brief, failed marriage to a woman who'd loved his money more than him. His growing disillusionment with the world he'd worked so hard to join. "Sometimes I think about selling everything and starting over somewhere new," he confessed. "Somewhere where no one knows who Alexander Pierce is." "What stops you?" Olivia asked. Alexander considered the question. "Responsibility, I suppose. I employ thousands of people. Their livelihoods depend on me. And then there's the fact that I don't know who I'd be without all of this. It's been my identity for so long." Olivia nodded thoughtfully. "I understand that. When Jamie's father left, I had to rebuild my entire identity. I went from being a partner, a culinary student with dreams, to being a single mother with responsibilities bigger than myself. It was terrifying." "How did you do it?" Alexander asked. "How did you find yourself again?" "I'm still finding myself," Olivia said with a small smile. "But having Jamie helped. He needed me to be strong, so I had to figure out how to be strong. He's the best thing that ever happened to me, even though our life isn't easy." As the evening progressed, their conversation flowed naturally from topic to topic. Books they'd read, places they'd traveled or hoped to travel, dreams they pursued and abandoned. Despite the vast differences in their circumstances, Alexander was struck by how much they had in common at a fundamental level. When the check came, Olivia reached for her purse, but Alexander gently stopped her. "Please let me get this," he said. Olivia hesitated before nodding. "Thank you," she said. "But next time, it's on me." "Next time," Alexander echoed, unable to hide his pleasure at the prospect. Olivia's smile was both shy and confident. "If you want there to be a next time," she said. "I do," Alexander replied without hesitation. "Very much." As they left the restaurant, the night air was cool and clear. Alexander walked Olivia to her car, a well-maintained but older model Honda. "I had a wonderful time tonight," he said as they stood beside her car. "So did I," Olivia replied. "It wasn't what I expected." "What did you expect?" Alexander asked. Olivia considered the question. "I thought you might be different outside of work. Less genuine, maybe. More like the image I've seen in magazines." And you're not," she said simply. "You're just a person. A complicated, interesting person." In that moment, Alexander knew he wanted to kiss her. But he also knew it was too soon, that rushing would risk ruining something that felt fragile and precious. Instead, he took her hand and raised it to his lips, pressing a gentle kiss to her knuckles. "Good night, Olivia," he said softly. "Drive safely." The surprise and warmth in Olivia's eyes told him he'd made the right choice. "Good night, Alexander," she replied, her voice just above a whisper. As he watched her drive away, Alexander felt a lightness in his chest that he hadn't experienced in years. For the first time in a long time, he was looking forward to tomorrow. Over the next few weeks, Alexander and Olivia continued to see each other. They had dinner at small, out-of-the-way restaurants. They went for walks in the park. They talked for hours about everything. By the end of the day, Jamie had warmed to Alexander, even taking his hand as they walked through the crowded museum. The gesture had filled Alexander with an unexpected tenderness. As the weeks turned into months, Alexander found himself spending more and more time with Olivia and Jamie. He'd help Jamie with his homework while Olivia prepared dinner in the small kitchen of their apartment. They'd watch movies together on Friday nights, Jamie falling asleep between them on the couch. Alexander had never imagined himself in this kind of domestic scene, but he found it more fulfilling than any business success he'd ever achieved. And then came the day that changed everything. Alexander was in his office, reviewing the latest financial projections with his CFO, when Rebecca interrupted with an urgent call. "It's Olivia," she said, her expression serious. "She says it's an emergency." Alexander excused himself immediately, taking the call in his private office. "Olivia? What's wrong?" "It's Jamie," Olivia said, her voice thick with tears. "He's in the hospital. He collapsed at school and they think it might be his heart. I'm with him now, but the doctors are talking about tests and specialists, and I don't know what to do, Alexander." I'm scared. Which hospital? Alexander asked, already reaching for his jacket. Memorial Children's, downtown, Olivia replied. But you don't have to. I'll be there in 20 minutes, Alexander interrupted. Hold on, Olivia. You're not alone in this. As his driver rushed him to the hospital, Alexander made calls. He knew people on the board of Memorial Children's, and he wasn't above using his influence to ensure that Jamie received the best possible care. When he arrived at the pediatric intensive care unit, he found Olivia sitting alone in a waiting room, her face pale with worry. She looked up as he entered, and the relief in her eyes broke his heart. Alexander, she said, standing to meet him. Thank you for coming. He wrapped his arms around her, holding her close. Of course I came, he said. How is Jamie? They're running tests, Olivia said, her voice muffled against his chest. They think he might have a congenital heart defect that was never diagnosed. The cardiologist is with him now. Alexander led her back to the chairs, keeping an arm around her shoulders. I've spoken to Dr. Wilkins, he said. She's the head of pediatric cardiology here. She's going to personally review Jamie's case. Olivia looked at him in surprise. How did you manage that? I know some people on the hospital board, Alexander said simply. And even if I didn't, I'd find a way to help. Jamie is important to me too, Olivia. Tears welled in Olivia's eyes. I don't know what I'd do if anything happened to him, she whispered. He's my whole world. I know, Alexander said, holding her tighter. But he's going to be okay. We'll make sure of it. They sat together in the waiting room for hours, Alexander never leaving Olivia's side. When the doctors finally came to speak with them, the news was both concerning and hopeful. Jamie had a heart condition that would require surgery, but it was operable, and his prognosis was good with the right care. The surgery is specialized, the cardiologist explained. We'd want to do it at Boston Children's Hospital, where they have more experience with these cases. The success rate there is excellent. Olivia's face fell. Boston? I don't know how I'd manage that. My insurance? And taking time off work. Don't worry about any of that, Alexander said firmly. I'll take care of everything. The doctor looked between them, then nodded. We'll start making arrangements. In the meantime, Jamie is stable. You can see him now. As they walked to Jamie's room, Olivia stopped, turning to Alexander with a serious expression. I can't let you pay for all of this, she said. It's too much. We're not your responsibility. Alexander took her hands in his. Olivia, listen to me. For my entire adult life, I've had more money than I could ever spend. I've bought cars and houses and art that I barely even look at. None of it has ever made me truly happy. He took a deep breath. But you and Jamie? You've given me something I didn't even know I was missing. A sense of purpose. A sense of family. So please let me do this. Not because I feel obligated, but because I love you both. It was the first time he'd said those words to her, and they hung in the air between them, both a declaration and a question. Olivia's eyes widened, then softened with emotion. You love us? She asked, her voice barely above a whisper. I do, Alexander said, knowing with absolute certainty that it was true. I love you, Olivia, and I love Jamie too. You've become my family, in all the ways that matter. Let me help my family. Tears spilled down Olivia's cheeks as she nodded. I love you too, she said. I've been afraid to say it. Afraid that this couldn't possibly be real. That someone like you couldn't possibly want someone like me. Alexander wiped away her tears with gentle fingers. You've got it backwards, he said. I'm the lucky one. You could have had anyone. But you chose to give your heart to a workaholic billionaire who didn't know what really mattered until he met you. Olivia laughed through her tears. We're quite a pair, aren't we? We are, Alexander agreed. Now let's go see our boy. As they walked into Jamie's room, hand in hand, Alexander knew that his life had changed irrevocably. The man who had once swiped left on 8 models without a second thought had found love in the most unexpected place, with a single mother who delivered his lunch. And he wouldn't have it any other way. 1 year later, the The small cafe was bustling with activity as Alexander walked through the door. The sign above the entrance read Jamie's Place in warm, inviting letters, and the interior matched the name. Cozy and welcoming, with the aroma of freshly baked bread and brewing coffee filling the air. Alexander, Jamie called from behind the counter, his smile bright. The surgery had been a complete success, and after 6 months of recovery, the 10-year-old was as energetic as ever. Mom's in the kitchen. She's trying out a new recipe. Thanks, buddy, Alexander replied, ruffling the boy's hair as he passed. How are the math problems going? Jamie rolled his eyes. Too easy, he declared. Can we do more advanced stuff tonight? Absolutely, Alexander promised. After dinner. In the kitchen, Olivia was focused intently on piping delicate designs onto a row of pastries. Her chef's coat was smudged with flour, and a streak of chocolate decorated her cheek. But to Alexander, she had never looked more beautiful. There's my favorite chef, he said, wrapping his arms around her from behind. Olivia leaned back into his embrace. Careful, she warned. You'll make me mess up the design. It already looks perfect, Alexander assured her, pressing a kiss to her temple. Just like everything else you do. Olivia set down her piping bag and turned in his arms. You're home early, she observed. No board meeting today? I delegated, Alexander said with a smile. That's what COOs are for. Besides, today is more important. Oh, Olivia raised an eyebrow. And why is that? It's our anniversary, Alexander reminded her. 1 year since our first date. I know, Olivia said, her eyes twinkling. I was testing you. Alexander laughed. A test I'm happy to pass. He reached into his pocket. I have something for you. Alexander, Olivia protested. We agreed no gifts. The cafe was already more than enough. This isn't exactly a gift, Alexander said, suddenly nervous. It's more of a question. He pulled out a small velvet box and dropped to one knee right there in the flour-dusted kitchen of Jamie's Place. Olivia's hands flew to her mouth as he opened the box to reveal a simple but elegant diamond ring. Olivia Martinez, Alexander said, his voice steady despite the rapid beating of his heart. You came into my life unexpectedly, delivering more than just a meal. You delivered purpose, joy, and love when I didn't even know I was missing them. You and Jamie have become my world, and I can't imagine my life without you both in it. Will you marry me? Tears welled in Olivia's eyes. Yes, she whispered. Yes, Alexander, I will marry you. As he slipped the ring onto her finger and rose to kiss her, the kitchen door burst open. Did she say yes? Jamie asked, bouncing with excitement. Can I call you Dad now? Alexander and Olivia broke apart, laughing. Come here, you, Alexander said, opening his arms to include Jamie in their embrace. And yes, you can call me Dad if you want to. Awesome, Jamie exclaimed, wrapping his arms around them both. We're going to be a real family. We already are a real family, Olivia corrected gently. The ring just makes it official. As Alexander held his soon-to-be wife and son in his arms, surrounded by the warmth and delicious smells of the cafe they'd built together, he marveled at how completely his life had changed in just 1 year. From the lonely penthouse to this flour-dusted kitchen. From meaningless wealth to priceless love. From isolation to family. Sometimes the most valuable deliveries came in the most unexpected packages. And Alexander Pierce, the billionaire CEO who had once rejected 8 models without a second thought, had found his true happiness with a single mother delivery girl who had seen past his wealth to the man beneath. It was not the life he had planned, but it was infinitely better than any life he could have imagined for himself. It was real. It was messy. It was perfect. And he wouldn't trade it for anything in the world. If you enjoyed this story, please hit that subscribe button right now to join our channel family. Your subscription means everything to us and helps us create more content like this. Want more heartwarming stories that remind us all that true love can be found in the most unexpected places? Ring that notification bell so you never miss a new upload. And don't forget to leave a comment below telling us what you thought of Alexander and Olivia's journey. What was your favorite part? Do you believe that love can truly cross social boundaries? Thank you so much for watching, and we'll see you in the next video.